Here we are again. We have another story, another Diamond Star stories from the 1934 to 1936 Diamond Star set. As you can see before you, here's a copy of the Joe Ducky Medwick card. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Joe Ducky Medwick, also known as Muscles too, during his playing career as well. Medwick was a legitimate star during the 1930s. It's a name a little bit lost in history, as other stars obviously have kind of gained and maintained the spotlight through the decades, whereas some of these other stars in the 1930s are a little bit lost in the background. But Medwick was a legitimate star, and let me kind of explain why. Medwick came from, he was the son of Hungarian immigrants, and he was born and raised in New Jersey. He was recruited in high school. He played multiple sports. He played baseball, basketball, track, and football. But he was recruited by Knute Rockne at Notre Dame to go play football. But instead he decided to turn pro in baseball, and he started pro ball in 1930 and debuted with the St. Louis Cardinals in 1932. His career spanned from 1932 as an active Major League Baseball player all the way to 1948. After his retirement, he actually continued to play baseball in minor leagues all the way through 1952, through the first international organization or National League with Miami, and then later Class B affiliates through Raleigh, and later, and I believe the other location was St. Petersburg, if I'm not mistaken, was the other place he played professionally after his Major League Baseball career was over. Some things know about Ducky Medwick. He is in the Hall of Fame. He was elected in 1968. He has a career award of 54.5. He made it on his 8th year of eligibility. His first few years on the ballot, he got no votes. The Hall of Fame voting system was different at that time, so he didn't get completely dropped off. It was thought to believe that he had kind of a prickly relationship with the teams and players he played with, the owners, and also even the press. And that was part of the reason he kind of served his penance, if you will, on the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame ballot for several years before he actually was voted in. So not too dissimilar what they do now with some guys that had some character issues during their playing days. He was on the Gas House Gang. He was probably the best offensive player on the Gas House Gang, a team that's kind of known for Dizzy and Daffy Dean, but they did obviously score a lot of runs too. He had a career .324 batting average, had 205 home runs and knocked in 1,383 RBIs, and he had just under 25,000 hits. During his playing career, he played for the Cardinals, was traded to the Dodgers, later was moved on to the Giants, then played briefly for the Boston Braves before he then came back to, I believe, the Dodgers briefly before he ended his career in St. Louis for his last 2 seasons. He was a 10-time All-Star. He was on the World Series winning team in 1934 with the Gas House Gang. He is known mostly in that World Series as the guy that was thrown out by the commissioner after he did a hard slide into the Detroit Tigers third baseman Marv Owen. The reason being was not because he did anything illegal on the play, even though it was considered to be kind of a hard slide at the time, but because the fans in the stands started throwing fruits and vegetables on the field in his direction. So the commissioner, Kennesaw Mountain Landis, was concerned for his safety, so he asked the Cardinals to take him off the field. So he was kind of unofficially thrown out for his safety. I think that was maybe the first time that happened. I'm sure it's maybe not the last time that happened, but it was kind of a noted incident within that World Series, which the Cardinals eventually won. Other things about him, he actually is, this is an interesting fact, and some baseball fans probably know this. As you know, Miguel Cabrera was the last man to hit the Triple Crown. Before then, it was Carly Yastrzemski. But the last Triple Crown winner in the National League is Joe Ducky Medwick in 1937. It's not been topped since, so that's kind of an interesting thing where, you know, we have Miguel Cabrera who's done it recently, so it's possible it may be done again, but a National Leaguer hasn't done it since 1937. He's led the league in RBIs 3 times, doubles in 3 times. In fact, he still has the single season double record in the National League of 64, and he had the most consecutive seasons of 40 doubles or more as a National Leaguer in the National League at the time of his retirement, until it was later broke by another Cardinal, Stan Musial. He had 7 at that time. He also led the league in hits twice and triples once. As I mentioned, obviously he was the last Triple Crown winner. The year he won the Triple Crown, he batted an amazing .374 in 1937. hit 31 home runs, which I believe was his career high, and drove in 154 RBIs, which was his career high as well at that time. All right. Trying to think other things I wanted to kind of talk about. So, see, he didn't end up being obviously a lifelong Cardinal, as I kind of point out, but he did come back with the Cardinals later on. And part of the reason is something I kind of alluded to earlier when we're talking about his candidacy for the Hall of Fame, is that he had kind of a prickly relationship with his teammates, but also with ownership. And at this time, in 1940, Branch Rickey was still involved with the St. Louis Cardinal organization. And the last few seasons leading into the 1940 season, Medwick had a lot of arguments in the salary arbitration process in the off-season with Rickey and also the owner, Sam Breeden. So they decided to trade him mid-season at that point. So I'm not sure the exact date he was traded, but he was still, during the baseball season, he was traded over to the Brooklyn Dodgers, who were managed by another former Cardinal and Gashouse gang member, Leo DeRocher. And so there's 6 days later, they actually were playing each other, and Ducky Medwick was actually struck by a beanball, bad enough where they thought it was actually a pretty serious incident, where they thought it might have been something that could have actually taken his life because they weren't wearing batting helmets at this time. And it resulted in a fight on the field led by the manager of the Dodgers, Leo DeRocher, taking his team out on the field. It was bad enough, actually, the Brooklyn district attorney actually investigated to see if this actually was intentful on the pitcher's part of actually trying to hit Medwick in the head. I think they were able to kind of determine that it was something where Medwick thought a different pitch was coming, because they were actually like in the game of obviously sign stealing within the game. I'm not talking about illegal signing, but like trying to pick up on what your opponent is doing with the signals they turn on the sidelines. He was thinking that I think a different pitch was coming, was what was kind of determined by both the district attorney and also the National League, who did an investigation too in the same process. So instead of expecting maybe a curveball that would obviously start high and looks like it might be coming in at you and later drop into the strike zone, he got smacked right in the head with a fastball. So, I think that sometimes when you hear about even the recent sign stealing stuff, some of the players don't even want it because they don't want to get crossed up that way and then think one thing's going to happen, commit to that, and then it's not right, and like they think it's a slider, but it's really a fastball. So there's no break on it. It goes right into their face. As I mentioned, after his retirement, he was a player coach in the minor leagues. So he did that all the way through 1952, and it was Raleigh and Tampa. And then there's a period of time where I don't have a lot of information on him for about a 14-year period before he actually was hired back by the St. Louis Cardinal organization, obviously with a different owner by this time in 1966. And he was a minor league hitting instructor in their organization. He held that role until his death in spring training in 1975 when he had a heart attack during spring training. So it definitely was a lifer baseball player all the way until his death, as you can kind of see. He was later added to the St. Louis Cardinals Hall of Fame in 2014, which is kind of funny that it waited that long to be able to add him in, if you kind of ask me personally. But that was the life and career of Joe Medwick. We'd like to have seen maybe a little more information about what he was like off the field with his family and stuff, but I wasn't able to kind of pick up some of that stuff from what I was able to review for this video. But before you there, you got a nice, beautiful 1934 or 34 to 36 Diamond Star card. Actually, I don't know exactly which year this is, so let's look on the back. Remember, if we look on the back, you can see by the trademark on here what year it was actually issued and released. So this one was in 1935, and you can also find that out by looking at the stat line, because they do update the stats. You can see in this one it was updated in 1934, so it does include his World Series stat line of a .379 batting average in the World Series, and this would have been obviously the following year release, where you can actually see the Medwick card. This one is probably in maybe fair to good condition. You see there is a stain on this card. God only knows what it's from. But other than that, the image is still pretty good. The corners are what you might expect from a card that's in good condition from this era. The back is very legible and you can read it. I'm just very pleased to get it. I was able to pick this up during the 2021 National Sports Card Convention here in Chicago. Obviously one coming up again in a few months here again in Chicago. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll be back next month with another issue from this particular set as I continue to work on building this set in my collection. So Have a great one.